Comrade de Blasio, watch out. Joining me now, Don Peebles, Chairman and CEO of Peebles Corporation, uncovered the New York Post yesterday and the newspaper again today, in part because you've had some very harsh words for your fellow Democrat, Bill de Blasio, mayor of New York. You say he's anti-business, he's anti-wealth, he's anti-accomplishment, and his performance has not been up to par. In short, that he's failed.
Yes, yeah. And it's true. I spoke only the truth. I think the mayor came into office with high hopes. Bill de Blasio made a lot of promises, and he's not fulfilled any of them.
So, but what promises has he made? I followed the campaign, and it just felt like typical progressive rhetoric to me. And where do you think he's gone wrong in such a short period of time?
Well, look, I think that the fact that the New York City residents, the vast majority of them, have lost confidence in his ability to lead the city is a major failing on his part. It's impossible to lead the city when people don't think you're competent to lead it. And I think if you want to look at some specific examples, he ran on a campaign of inclusion. He ran on a campaign of giving opportunities to minority and women-owned businesses. And yet, out of the $18 billion of contracts that his government let last year, only 3.9% of those contracts went to minority and women-owned businesses in a city that's 53% female and 65% minority. So that's a failing in itself, and he promised to do that.
Well, what do you think happened then? I mean, do you think that was intentional? I mean, listen, he's got a mixed marriage. He's been known to be an activist. I don't know that anyone would say he was racist or prejudiced, or is it just, what is it? Where does the line come down? Is it just incompetence or indifference?
No, look, Bill de Blasio, I think, is a nice person, and I think Bill de Blasio is extremely well-intended. He's just been hired by the residents of New York for a job he's not capable of doing. He's not qualified to run the city of New York.
But you did support him, though. Did you put money into his campaign?
I did support him because I thought that he would at least recognize his own limitations and do what he said, which was to bring talented, qualified people in to run the government.
Was he diverted, Don? I mean, some of the stuff that he got embroiled in the beginning, like the carrot to horses, wanted to take the horse carriages off the street. He declared war on them. And then, of course, he declared war on the police department, at least it felt like it, which was a much bigger issue. And we should point out, crime has gone through the roof, and people are starting to worry that the good old days of the 70s and 80s are coming back.
Well, look, I think, the mayor's orientation and his whole approach to government is from the 1970s, 1980s. And here we are in 2015, in the 21st century, and his programs and his policies are out of date. The fact that he with a city as complicated, facing the numerous challenges that the city faces, that he would actually spend his political capital and time to challenge Uber, to move horse and buggies out of Central Park, to offend the police department, makes no sense to me. The reality is that there are bigger priorities that he should be dealing with. Affordable housing. He talks about affordable housing, but yet he's not able to deliver any affordable housing, and he's taking credit for what Michael Bloomberg did and left him. So Michael Bloomberg left him a pipeline of affordable housing units, and he's taking credit for that. In terms of what he's initiated, his government's initiated, it's zero.
Don, what's the difference then from the model, from the progressive or Democratic model from the 70s and 80s and now? What's the adjustment that the party should be making? Not only Bill de Blasio, but let's face it, it feels like the entire party on a national level moving toward the left. Hillary Clinton's moving toward the left. Bernie Sanders is obviously on the left. Elizabeth Warren. Why are they still so attracted to that part of that business model or that political model?
Well, I think because in some regards it served them in the past. It's been effective in the past. But if you look at Bill de Blasio's approach to the minority community, this is a city that's majority minority, and yet he approaches us in a paternalistic manner. The reality is...
But you know what? I hate to say it. I feel like liberals have always done that.
Well, I think to some degree they have. Here we are, though, now in the 21st century. We're in the greatest city in the world, and yet many tens of thousands of residents are left out of the economic mainstream. The solution to our challenges, if he wants to narrow the income inequity, if I were mayor, I would focus on improving education dramatically and quickly. And also, I would provide economic opportunities, an expanded economy, and access to equal economic opportunities.
So
that's the pathway to the American dream.
You expand charter schools and school choice, things like that?
Absolutely. And also, run the school system like I run my business, like most successful enterprises run. You reward accomplishment, you reward results, and you eliminate underperformers and incompetence.
But doesn't a Democrat run headlong into this brick wall known as the teachers union, who probably would be object to something like that? Can you even be elected in a city like New York as a Democrat without their backing?
Absolutely you can. And look, one of the reasons that I would self-finance my campaign is because I'd want to do what I think is right. And what I think is right, I can't look young people and their parents in the eye and say, give me 5 years, give me 10 years to fix this mess, and you're going to miss out. You're going to have a subpar education, but I want you to stay in this system because I need to protect these jobs. New York
Post says you pegs your wealth at about $700 million. You say you'd be self-financed. People love that. They love that with Donald Trump. Is saying, in other words, you won't be beholden to anyone. What would you do with taxes? What would you do with taxes? Because we always hear income inequality, but as I study it personally from a finance point of view, I see all of these cities where income inequality is the worst, and they happen to have, in my mind, these really draconian tax policies.
Well, look, New Yorkers are already overtaxed. New York businesses are already overtaxed. And the reality is the most affluent and the strong companies can relocate. They can cross the river. There are no walls around New York City. There's no barrier to going to Connecticut, going to New Jersey, going to Westchester. What I find the most troubling is that these policies, in fact, for example, affordable housing and the absurd cost of housing for New York residents forces people who are committed to the city to make the hard choice that they have to move to Westchester, they have to move to Long Island, New Jersey, Connecticut, right, in order to afford housing or to provide a good education, right, for their kids.
I think we're at like 55% of people's income going to rent, which means you're getting trapped. You'll never be able to get out of this rent hole and own your own home if you ever decide to come here and live here for an extended period of time. All right, real quick before we finish the segment. So are you going to run? I mean, are you just teasing us a little bit? Because in today's paper, everyone is saying, please run for mayor. Are you going to do it?
I'm going to give it very strong consideration. In fact, look, many people I respect and admire, both in politics, business, and community activists, are asking me and encouraging me to announce now. I want to engage in more of a discussion with New Yorkers, and I'm going to do that over the next few months. And then ultimately, if I choose to run for mayor, then I would announce sometime within the next year or so. But I would get engaged, and I plan to be engaged now. And also, there's no real voice out here holding this man accountable for anything other than the media is doing it, the polling numbers are showing it, and all I'm doing is saying what the average New Yorker is saying and expressing in these polls. And I intend to hold him accountable.
Right. Don, I want you to come back later because we're going to talk about American cities on fire. We saw St. Louis, we saw last night, Baltimore, the list goes on and on and on. New York, who knows, could go up in the flames, because of all the pent up stuff that's happening here. So we want you to come back later and talk about that as well.